Kia ora and welcome to the Beer Jerk Beer of the Week Drink Along, where each week we discover a new beer. We've been doing this for over 8 years now and we have never drunk the same beer twice. So if you're watching this and you're not a subscriber, you might want to get involved. The way it works is that every 6 weeks we send a box of 6 different beers to your house. You're not allowed to drink the beers because you need to wait till Thursday night. And every single week you learn about the story behind that beer, who made it, the sort of stuff I'm going to be talking about in this video. And we also send out an email that has some more info and things like food pairings. We do a music match, all that sort of good stuff. So you can just head to the Beer Jerk website and get involved. It costs about $8 per beer, including shipping and everything else, which I think is pretty good. This week we're drinking Petit Rayon de Soleil from the Garage Project. You've probably heard of Garage Project. They make some quite good beers. We've only ever had, I think, 2 Garage Project beers in all those hundreds and hundreds of beers that we've had as Beer of the Week in the subscription. And the reason is, Garage Project do a pretty good job at getting their own beers out there. Wow, that's good. With this subscription, I like bringing you interesting, unusual, hard to find beers. So we do a little bit of importing. We work with really small breweries, always independent breweries, to bring you beers that you're not going to easily find in your local bottle shop or supermarket. As I say, Garage Projects they're pretty big these days. They have a really fantastic network all over the whole country. So, and also, because they're so fantastic, generally beer fans, the sort of people that would sign up to a Beer of the Week subscription like Beer Jerk's Classic Sub, probably would seek them out. If you spotted a new Garage Project in a shop, you probably would just buy it anyway. So that's the reason we haven't had many. The only ones we've had have been ones that have been very small batches. So we had a couple of beers from their Wild Workshop previously. And they do smaller batches and bigger batches. So most of the beer from Garage Project is, unsurprisingly, not brewed in their little garage into Arrow. It's they're contract brewed at a very, very large facility called B Studio. So that's how they're able to just crank out such massive volumes of their beers to become one of the biggest independent breweries in New Zealand. And these days they're also brewing a lot in Australia as well. I think last I heard they were contract brewing at Hop Nation in Australia. So I don't know if they've got plans to build their own setup over there, but Garage Project is super popular on that side of the Tasman as well. So yeah, the story you probably know, started by 3 mates in Wellington about 11 years ago now, a little over 11 years ago. And they had a really interesting start. They started out by releasing 24 beers in 24 weeks. So just on a homebrew setup, brewing 50 litres at a time. And I think it was each Wednesday the keg would get released at a little bar in a basement called Hashigozaki, which used to be the place to go in Wellington for interesting craft beer. They also had an importing arms. They bought interesting stuff from all over the world, but especially America. So Hashigozaki has a real place in the hearts of a lot of Wellington and New Zealand beer drinkers. And each Wednesday the beer will get tapped and drinkers would make notes on the beer and leave a little review, and the brewers would get some feedback on whether it was a beer that their people enjoyed or not. And a few of those first 24 beers have indeed entered the core range, or beers that are in regular rotation at any rate. I think Arrow Noir was part of those first beers. I'm pretty sure Pernicious Weed was one of those first ones. So just a really, really cool model. Good way to start a brewery, I think, just getting feedback on regular releases. These days, the Wild Workshop is doing some super interesting stuff. There's a whole separate facility in the middle of Wellington, actually. It's sort of next door to Whistling Sisters. And they do wild fermentation beers. They've got a load of fooders there. They've got amphora, barrels. So all kinds of wild stuff is going on there. And what I like about Garage Project is they release lots of interesting and unusual styles, which we've met before. You probably know that's the sort of thing that I'm also interested in, and interesting historic European styles as well. Like wit. Wit is a style that that completely died out. So it's a very historic beer style from the Flemish region of Belgium. I almost said Flanders, but the Flemish region, which has been brewed for centuries. And it's, as you can see, it's a cloudy beer style, often a bit cloudier than this, made with wheat. So wheat just means white. So has a similar shared history, I suppose, to the white beers of Germany, Weiss beer. But still very much its own thing, wit, despite the similarities. And not least because the Belgians would use interesting adjuncts in their beers, which were not really allowed under the Reinheitsgebot of Germany, the German purity laws. A lot of people think about historic beer styles as being very, very straight, very by the book, only containing the core ingredients of beer, which are hops, yeast, water, barley. But in Belgium, they used all kinds of stuff. Probably not least because they have the Dutch East India Company. So you have the spice trade going to the Spice Islands in what is now Indonesia, bringing back all sorts of interesting ingredients that they could chuck into the beer. So coriander and orange zest were key parts of wit and are still key parts to this day in most modern wits that are brewed. And I don't know why they would have used those ingredients originally. I suppose the same reason that people use hops, just for some interesting additional flavour characteristics. I don't know if coriander or orange zest would have any stabilising properties like hops do and a lot of other botanicals, perhaps. Maybe I should have read into that before presenting you with this video. But what I do know is that coriander and orange peel are delicious, and probably in the olden days they would have gone some way towards covering up any unwanted sourness or funkiness in the beer. They'd have given it a bit of a pleasant, fruity and spicy character, which sort of goes nicely with the spicy yeast character that you get in these wit beers. And wit really had disappeared, and it only was brought back to life thanks to one man, Pierre Kellis, who started the brewery that you probably have heard of called Hoegaarden in his hometown of Hoegaarden in the Flemish region. Pierre, I believe, worked as a milkman. There's a good article that I'll share in the NZ Beer Jokes Facebook group, so you can read a bit more about him. He's got a really fascinating story. And as a boy, he worked in a brewery and helped around the brewery brewing wit. And then the final wit beer brewery closed down, and he'd just go and have beers with his friends after work, and all these old chaps would lament about how wit didn't exist anymore, and he pointed out that he knew how to make wit. So his friends forced him to make some wit, which he did, which, as I say, became Hoegaarden. And then that sort of became hugely successful and got bought out by a big mega brewery. Then he started another brewery that had a disastrous end and failed. Then he moved to Texas, of all places. And he's passed away, sadly, but his daughter and his family now continue the Kellis Brewery in Texas. So you can go and pay a pilgrimage and homage to the father of wit. This is not that similar to those original wits. It's similar in spirit and in heart, but it does not contain coriander, which probably a lot of you might be glad about, because a lot of people really hate coriander. I think there's some kind of, I think it's actually in your genes if you hate coriander, but anyway, that's a whole different thing. And it doesn't contain orange peel either. It contains rhubarb, which is a really fantastic flavour, and it would be cool to see more rhubarb in beers. It's just a really, quite a unique flavour and aroma to rhubarb that I'd like to see more of. I always enjoy delicious rhubarb things. And grapefruit. So it's the grapefruit that is most prominent in this, and grapefruit works well with all kinds of beer styles, notably West Coast IPA, so the grapefruit sculpin, the Brewdog Elvis juice, the Small Gods Elvish juice. Grapefruit goes really well with American hops, but also it goes well in saisons, in wit beers. I don't know if a grapefruit stout would be any good. Might be worth trying. Maybe a grapefruit black lager could be delicious. Anyway, grapefruit is pretty tasty. I think they've done a really good job here. As I say, it's grapefruit on the nose. You're getting a real, just morning breakfast vibes in this beer. It definitely tastes like something that if you're on your holidays having a continental breakfast, this would accompany breakfast really beautifully with a grapefruit and a rhubarb compote and yogurt sort of thing. It's a little ray of sunshine, as it says on the label. So hopefully the sun is shining wherever you are while you're drinking this. And I've got to say, I really appreciate it when breweries put work into doing beautiful labels. And of course, most of the small independent brewers that we do have in the Beer Jug box do really fantastic labels. I like that Garage Project, they always put the name of the artist on the can. This is art by Kumi Matsumoto. And it's quite an expensive label as well. You can tell by the sort of spot varnish. So I think often brewers, I know I do, put so much work into designing a label. And perhaps doesn't really get noticed by drinkers that just enjoy the liquid. But anyway, thank you for joining me. I hope you have a fantastic week and we'll see you next time. Cheers.